Welcome to a Programming Languages virtual meetup pre-recording. My name is Connor Hoekstra, and in this video, we're going to be going over the first section of Chapter 5, Chapter 5.1 from the Structure and Interpretation of Computer Programs. The table of contents for this chapter section is as follows. The chapter number 5 is called Computing with Register Machines, and section 5.1 is called Designing Register Machines. This is made up of 5 subsections titled 5.1.1, a language for describing register machines, 5.1.2, abstraction in machine design, 5.1.3, subroutines, 5.1.4, using a stack to implement recursion, and then finally a very short one-page 5.1.5 instruction summary. This, in my opinion, was quite a dry chapter section. It felt like an introduction to what we're going to see in the subsequent subsections. So I'm going to go pretty quickly through this stuff. I will show an animated version of what I think is the most important concept covered in this chapter section. But my number one thing I want to recommend is for you to go and watch the corresponding MIT lecture that goes with this chapter section. This is probably the first time I'd say that the video was, an order of magnitude more interesting than reading through the chapter section. And this is because Dr. Gerald Sussman walks through sort of an example similar to the one that I'm going to animate for you. And he does that for basically like every chapter subsection. And it's a lot easier, at least for me, to digest this when you're being walked through a visual explanation than it is just sort of reading this page by page. So at the top of the description for this YouTube video will be the link to that MIT lecture. Even if you haven't watched any of the other lectures, I highly recommend you go and watch that lecture. That being said, let's take a look at what the start of this chapter, Chapter 5, says. It has a summary of what we've sort of done so far. So Chapter 5 starts with, we began this book by studying processes and by describing processes in terms of procedures written in Lisp. To explain the meaning of these procedures, we used a succession of models of evaluation: the substitution model of Chapter 1, the environment model of Chapter 3, and the metacircular evaluator of Chapter 4. Our examination of the metacircular evaluator, in particular, dispelled much of the mystery of how Lisp-like languages are interpreted. But even the metacircular evaluator leaves important questions unanswered because it fails to elucidate the mechanisms of control in a Lisp system. The text then goes on to read, in this chapter we will describe processes in terms of the step-by-step operation of a traditional computer. Such a computer or register machine sequentially executes instructions that manipulate the contents of a fixed set of storage elements called registers. A typical register machine instructions applies a primitive operation to the contents of some registers and assigns the result to another register. Our description of processes executed by register machines will look very much like machine language programs for traditional computers. However, instead of focusing on the machine language of any particular computer, we will examine several Lisp procedures and design a specific register machine to execute each procedure. So basically laying out what we're going to do for this chapter, we're going to be looking at sort of Lisp procedure equivalents of sort of low-level assembly instructions, and we're not going to be looking at anything specific like x86 or any old-school PDP-8 assembly instruction language. We're just going to be looking at sort of what the equivalent of this could be in Lisp and implementing some of those procedures. So with that, we hop into our first subsection of Chapter 5.1, a language for describing register machines. And I'm going to skip past all the text, and basically this is sort of the main subsection that I think has an important point. And if you can understand this one example that I'm about to animate, I think that's basically like a good enough takeaway from this chapter section. So the chapter introduces GCD with the following procedure. So taking two integers A and B, and it's basically going to recursively call GCD on the remainder until B is equal to 0, in which case it's going to return A. And once the text introduces this procedure, it then shows you what this looks like for a sort of data path visualization. And I actually find these not intuitive at all, and I really had to work through this a couple times to fully comprehend what each of these rounded rectangles, trapezoids, triangles, circles, arrows, and circles with crosses in them meant, but I'm going to walk you through it, and we're going to read the exact points in the text that fully explain what each of these are doing. So the first thing we need to read is the following. So in this diagram, the registers A, B, and T are represented by rectangles. So the rounded rectangles are the registers labeled with their names inside of them. So we have 3 registers, A, B, and T. Each way to assign a value to a register is indicated by an arrow with an X behind the head. So assigning from one register to another, or from like an operation to a register, is what the arrows with the circles and crosses through them represent. We can think of the X as a button that, when pushed, allows the value at the source to flow into the designated register. The label next to each button is the name we will use to refer to the button. So each of the buttons with circles and crosses in them, as we can see here, we've got 3 buttons, B to A, T to B, and R to T, are buttons that we can press that are going to be hooked up to another diagram that we'll see in a second. So the next piece of text we need to look at is the following. The source of data for a register can be another register, as in the B to A assignment, an operation result, as in the R to T, so R is for the remainder operation, which then stores the result in the register T assignment, or a constant. And this is important because it gives you an extra piece of information, a built-in value that cannot be changed, represented in the data path diagram by a triangle containing the constant. The text then goes on to say, an operation that computes a value from constants and the contents of registers is represented in a data path diagram by a trapezoid containing a name for the operation. So at this point, we now know that constants are represented by triangles and sort of operations are represented by trapezoids. And the only thing that's left is this circle, which represents tests. So I won't show you the text for that because it's only a single sentence, but basically a circle represents a test. So to recap, we have rounded rectangles, which are registers, trapezoids, which are operations, arrows, which are basically assigning the contents of one register or an operation or a constant into that register, and then the X's in the circles representing sort of the button that you can press in order to make that assignment happen. Triangles that represent constants, and then circles that represent tests. And with that, we have all the information to understand this sort of data path visualization. This, however, is not enough in order to understand how this GCD computation works in total. We then have to introduce the controller for a GCD machine. And this is like probably the most unintuitive thing from the combination of these data path visualizations and controller, in that the rounded rectangles sort of represent the buttons being pushed. So they're reusing sort of something that means register here to mean sort of a button push, which I find confusing. And then on top of that, this diamond represents a conditional that links to the circle test. So I'm not sure, there's probably a good reason why this just isn't a circle, but this basically conditional is the checking of this test. And so once we have that all sorted out, we can then basically walk through an example. So this is very similar to the example that Dr. Sussman walks through in his lecture, but we're going to replicate it here with some extra fancy animations that hopefully makes it make sense. So if we start with the example of trying to find the greatest common denominator of the two integers 42 and 30, we will start by putting each of these values in the registers A and B, and then we will start in our controller diagram where we're going to check our test. And our test is checking, are the contents of B equal to 0? Our test fails, so we go back to our controller, and then we're going to press the following buttons. We are basically going to go from R to T, so that consists of basically executing our remainder operation. When we do this, 42 or 30, 42 divided by 30 is going to give 1 remainder 12, so we put remainder 12 here. We then press the B to A button, which is going to move 30 over to 42. We then press the T to B button, which is going to put 12 into B, and then we are back at our conditional where we are going to test, does the value in register B equal to 0? So we do this again, this fails, and then we just repeat the same 3 steps again. So calculate the remainder, 30 divided by 12 is going to be 2, which with remainder 6, so 6 goes in register T. We then go B to A, which replaces the 30 with 12. We then go T to B, which replaces the B with 6, and then we perform our test again. Once again, 6 is not equal to 0, and we just repeat. So now we're computing the remainder. This time, 6 evenly goes into 12, so our remainder will be 0. We then assign B to A, which is going to do the following, then T to B, which is going to do the following, and then we're back at our conditional, and finally we are at our passing case for our test case. The value in register B is equal to 0, at which case we're done and we take the value in register A as our result. So the result of GCD of 42 and 30 gives us 6, which makes sense because 6 goes into 42 7 times and it goes into 30 5 times, and there's no number larger that goes into both numbers. So hopefully that sort of animated visualization makes sense. Like I said, this was not intuitive for me. They look like simple diagrams, but there's a lot of subtleties in that sort of the name of this test corresponds to this conditional, and the fact that they're reusing rounded rectangles to be sort of button pressing. As you can see, each of the names of these sort of rounded rectangles corresponds to the name of a button in our data path visualization. But once you work through all of that, it's pretty straightforward to sort of follow the flow of these examples. And if you can understand, like I said, this example, I think you've basically gotten the majority of what this chapter is teaching. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this pre-recording, I highly recommend you go and watch the MIT lecture. Dr. Sussman does a fantastic job of doing this exact thing. So it's a sort of a slightly looking different controller diagram here with the exact same looking data path visualization. But he also has sort of the Lisp assembly off to the right that he links this code to, which is even more helpful. And he probably does a better job explaining it than I do. So this wraps up the first subsection, which brings us to the second subsection, 5.1.2, Abstraction in Machine Design. Basically, all I want to highlight from this subsection is that they are introducing the ability to sort of read outputs and print outputs, which complicates our diagram. But then on top of that, more importantly, it's introducing this sort of Lisp assembly, which I'm not going to walk through, but basically maps to our both controller and our data path visualization. So you can note that they have sort of the assign, where you're assigning the contents of one register to another register. They have the test. And if you walk through this, it's going to, one-to-one map to the two diagrams that we just saw. This takes us to our third subsection, subroutines. Once again, I'm just going to quickly sort of summarize what this subsection covers. We are shown two different sort of GCD operations where they're saying, well, what if we want to take the GCD of, two numbers and then the GCD of two other numbers? Do we need two separate sort of Lisp assembly procedures? And if you are familiar with what subroutines are, aka just another word for procedures or functions, they're going to basically factor out the common things so that you don't need to, have sort of an infinite number of registers or differently named registers to do the same operation. So when you do that, you're going to end up with, not the following code. So this is where you have two different Lisp assemblies that are doing the exact same thing with just different registers. You can modify this so that you're using the continue statement, and then you just have one generic sort of GCD procedure or sort of Lisp assembly instructions here to enable us to basically share code in the form of subroutines. That takes us to the second last subsection. So this is 5.1.4, using a stack to implement recursion. This is a super interesting part of the chapter. However, once again, the MIT lecture does a way better job than the textbook, in my opinion, does at sort of laying out what's happening here. So I'm not even going to summarize anything here. I'm just going to show sort of a very blurry screenshot from the lecture where basically you have a data path visualization on the left, connected to a stack on the middle, which also has sort of a controller data flow here as well, and then the Lisp on top of this. And Dr. Sussman walks you through sort of how, while you're making recursive calls to, I believe it is factorial, while you're making recursives call to that, the sort of slots in your stack build up, and then as you're walking back down, sort of they disappear, and you end up with your final result. But I highly recommend going and watching the MIT lecture. I will not do the explanation that Dr. Sussman gives justice by trying to replicate it here. And last but not least is our final section, which is 5.1.5, instruction summary. This is just a single page, which basically summarizes what we sort of learned and got introduced to in 5.1.2. It's just all the different instructions. So we have assign, perform, test, branch, go to, and then save, restore. And it also introduces how to set up const values. So like I said, this chapter is really, it feels like an introduction to what we're going to be doing in the next chapter. section, which I believe is sort of implementing a lightweight register machine. I haven't read that chapter yet, but that's sort of my prediction based on the title of it. And as I said, I found this chapter a bit dry. It was definitely not the most fun to read. And I found, at least while reading through it, the data path visualizations a bit confusing. But after watching the MIT lecture, it was pretty crystal clear what was going on. So for the fifth and final time, I highly recommend going and watching that, which is the final thing I have to say. It's just, once again, highlighting that the lecture is probably like, as a ratio of how good the lecture was over how good the chapter section was, this definitely has the highest value for that ratio of all of the lectures, versus chapter sections that I've read so far. And that brings us to the end of the video. So I hope you enjoyed watching. I hope you learned something. Hopefully chapter 5.2 will get a bit more into the implementation and coding, because that's always my favorite. And we will find out next week. So hope to see you in the next video.